Hello and welcome to Indigenous Cafe. I'm your host, Roman Orona. I'm glad that you joined me today as we travel the world and have music, conversation, and inspiration. This week we will experience breath through wood. And you'll understand what I mean by that as we get going and play some music for you. Enjoy a little bit of Artificial Red, titled She Walks in Beauty, from the album Res Radio. You're listening to Indigenous Cafe. I'm your host, Roman Orona, and you just listened to Coyote Jump off the album Waking from the Roots, and that was a song titled Migration. And before that was Anthony Wakeman from his Points of Origin album. That song was called Protector. Talking about migration, migration is the movement of something, the movement of animals, right? Or the movement of us, so we migrate constantly, whether we do it because we're going to leave cold weather, or we'll leave hot weather, or we're moving, migrating from one country to another, or a place to place because of a job, or for many different reasons. And today on Indigenous Cafe, we're definitely going to have some migration. We're definitely going to be moving around the world. Let's migrate on down south. This is Jessita Reyes and Grupo Yaqui off the album Deer Dancer. This is Deer Spirit. for those that do not know, the Yaqui people, or Yome is what we call ourselves, are an Udo-Aztecan speaking people. And we're originally from Mexico, in the valley of the Rio Yaqui, and that's in the Mexican state of Sonora. And we also have the Pascua Yaqui tribe, which is based, the headquarters is in Tucson, Arizona, but we also have a village in Old Pascua, again in Tucson, and then we have a village here in Guadalupe, Arizona, as well. And you can find us all over California, Texas, Nevada. So it's a little bit about part of who I am. And I say part because we as humans piece everything out. I'm indigenous. And within these bloods, or within my blood, is Apache, Pueblo, and Yaqui. You're listening to Indigenous Cafe. I'm your host, Roman Orona. We've got a special guest coming on here shortly, and so we'll bring them on in a bit. But before that, we're going to migrate on down to the Andes. And this is a song titled Pedregoso, and this is from Kenchu Kimanda. And just so you know, Pedregoso means like stony or rocky. You're listening to Indigenous Cafe. I'm your host, Roman Orona, and I mentioned earlier that we were going to have a special guest, and I would like the special guest to go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Hey, my name's Jack Holland. Everybody calls me Flute. I'm from the band Crazy Flute. We're based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Welcome to the show, man. I know you're busy. You've got several albums out right now. I hear through the grapevine being you, that that you have a new one coming out.
Yeah, we've got one. We're about halfway done with the recording process of it right now, and we should have it out late September, early October at the very latest.
Right on. I'm looking forward to hearing that. I've heard several of your recordings, and I love them, man. I love what you're doing with the flute. I love how you incorporating a lot of different things into it, and I think it's really cool. How did you get started?
Got started. My grandpa and my father were both flute players. And I was, from a young age, pretty enthralled by it, and I wanted to learn how to play, and neither one of them would teach me how to play, because they told me that if they taught me how to play, I would play like them, and I needed to find my own song and learn how to play like me. So years after that, I was in my late teens and was living in Oklahoma, and went to a powwow. I was married at the time. Went to a powwow with my wife, and one of her extended family was he had a booth set up, and he had flutes for sale. And I was like, ooh, the guy called himself John Hawk, not to be confused with the other. I think there's another guy named John Little Hawk or something like that.
Right.
That's a flute player now, but this was a different guy. And I spent all day helping him, goof around with his flutes and talking to people, and it was really fun. And at the end of the day, he said he had a problem, and he had 3 or 4 flutes, and he couldn't figure out for himself which one sounded best. And he asked me which one I thought sounded best, and I picked one, and he gave it to me with the condition that I come back in a year and play him a song. And that's kind of how the journey started, because then it was I had to do something and got started playing, and came back, played him his song, and I was going to give up the flute at that point. And a gentleman named Tom Minton, who used to live in Black Mountain, North Carolina, was at another powwow there in Oklahoma, and I was wandering around, and I was complaining to a friend of mine there, oh, these flutes are cool, and I said, these are kind of, the instrument's kind of limited in what it could do, because I didn't know a lot of what I was doing at the time. And Tom took a little bit of an exception to that, because he heard me as I was walking by, and he called me over, and he schooled me. I mean, he 100% schooled me. He did amazing things on his flutes, and he was using little 5-hole bamboo flutes that he makes. And I ended up staying, every time he was around, I'd go and see him, and he would not teach me how to do things on the flute, but teach me why to do things on the flute. And it just stuck with me after that, because I found a whole new world. I've nicknamed him my Flute Yoda.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I as a fellow artist, it's important that you find your voice. And I think that schooling, and it was probably, at that time, it was probably like a kick in the gut, right? You're like, oh man, you're not going to teach me. But it was probably one of the best things that could ever happen, because then you got to learn you on that instrument. And that's important. Your voice on that instrument's important. That's cool. I really like that story.
That's what I tell people now when they're asking me about flutes and stuff. I tell them, the 2 biggest things I can tell folks is, don't compare yourself to other artists.
Right.
Don't worry about what they sound like. Worry about what you sound like. And, just take the time and practice and find your own song that's inside of you, and it'll come out, and you'll recognize it and be able to build on it from there.
You're absolutely right. And especially in a time when, social media is so prevalent, right? And so we're constantly comparing ourselves to everybody else and looking at everybody else's social media page and going, well, why can't I be there? Or why can't I do that? And why can't I? And all those doubts are instilled in us. And man,
yeah, 100%. I used to listen to Carlos Nakai on, his stuff out there, and I would listen to him, and I tell people, I said, it used to make me want to take my flutes and just chunk them in a wood chipper, because it's like, I cannot even compare to this guy.
Right. Right.
But I kept on with it.
And that's good. And you found your voice and you found your niche, and and that's the thing. Everybody, there's always a piece in the pie, right? There's always a piece for somebody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. RC, I mean, his story is incredible too, right? So, and he had his journey, to get where he's at, right? But no one understands that, because everybody just hears where he's at now. But no one understands that he had to go through difficulty to get where he's at now, So, as a flute player, and as a person, and as a musician, and an artist, and everything that is around you, how do you use your talent and your medicine, I'll call it, your music, okay? How do you use that to benefit, your circle and then, the rest of the world? How do you, what kind of goes into your music and your playing and all of that?
The biggest thing for me that goes into it is, and I'm not knocking anybody, okay, but a lot of the indigenous music that you hear when it coming from flutes, most people, really go for that traditional meditative sound. I'll call it classic flute playing. And I'm a really upbeat, kind of hyper, guy, and my flute playing, a lot of it reflects that. I'm trying to put, this happy vibe, this living vibe, if you want to call it that, to be able to, get people moving, because we go around and play, and we always get this, man, I've never heard anything like that on a flute before.
Right.
So, and what I want to do is put out that positive, upbeat vibe, because, we have a song called End of the Trail that's a really upbeat little piece, and it's my idea on that flag you see all the time with the defeated looking warrior on the horse.
Right.
And I'm just like, End of the Trail for indigenous people is going to be a time of happiness, because we're going to get it all back.
Absolutely.
And so to me, the end of the trail for, the nations out there is going to be an upbeat, happy time, because, after this long, we can't lose.
Well, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a prophecy that talks about that the indigenous people, the one that I'm talking about specifically is the indigenous people of the Americas will enlighten the entire world. And,
yes.
And we can't let that go. There's been other things. We've struggled too long. We've been through the mill. We don't know, not anymore. It's time for us to rise up and do it right. You know what I mean? And show them that we're resilient and strong and grounded. I like where you're coming from with your music, man. I appreciate it. I think you're absolutely right. I think the people's ear kind of lends to very somber, meditative stuff. But again, your stuff is very lively. It's danceable. It gets that soul moving, and that's good. That's a good thing.
Yep, I've been nicknamed at several of the events that I've gone to. People come up. I got called the heavy metal of native flute. I got called the Stevie Ray Vaughan of native flute. And recently in Ohio, I got called the Black Sabbath of native flute. So...
There's nothing wrong with that, man. I mean, like I said, there's plenty of room in this world of artists for everybody to get a piece of their pie and do what they do, right? And have a niche, man.
I agree.
I appreciate you taking time. Is there any last words that you want to kind of let the listeners know what to be expected. I know that you've been nominated for several NAMMYs, and you've just a lot of awards, man. I highly recommend people out there, picking up your music, man. Is there anything you want to let the audience know?
Just go out, even if it's not my music, go out and support your independent artists out there who are, working in the streets and, the little clubs and venues and small powwows and stuff, trying to, get their name out there, because that helps us so much. My group started out in Chattanooga, Tennessee with a little tin bucket, hand drum and a flute. And we, in our first year, just from tips, managed to build our own recording studio and release an album, and we've been going strong since, because of folks who come out to support, all of us independent people out there, and make it a point, never be afraid to ask questions or go to somebody that you admire and, get advice on how to improve, because I don't care what level you're at, there's always something more to learn and a way to improve who you are and make your music more accessible to the world.
Absolutely agree with you 100%, man. I appreciate the words of wisdom. Keep doing what you're doing, man. Best of luck on this, upcoming release. I look forward to hearing it, and not only hearing it, but playing it on Indigenous Cafe, man. Again, best of luck to you and the rest of the band. My love, and if anything I can do to help, man, I'm here. So I appreciate the time.
Appreciate you, man. Big time.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. I know you're busy. I know you got a lot of things to do, but thanks for taking time for us and the audience. And again, man, best of luck.
All right, thanks for having us on. And one last little thing, you can go and find our music on Facebook. Just do the @CrazyFlute01. You can find our Facebook page, and we have a main website which has all three of the albums up, where you can hear, each of the songs in their entirety, and that is crazyflutemusic.com.
Best of luck, man. Again, go out to crazyflutemusic.com and support this amazing band, man. We'll talk to you guys later. Best of luck, and thanks again.
All right, thank you, brother.
Here's some Crazy Flute, End of the Trail, off of the album We Belong Together. That was Nawang Khechog, and he's a Tibetan flute player and composer. He was born in Tibet, and when the Chinese invasion happened in the 49 or 1950, something like that, his family moved to India, and then he studied meditation and Buddhist philosophy, and then he spent 11 years as a monk. And 4 of those years meditating on the foothills of the Himalayan mountains. And that was under the guidance of the Dalai Lama. You're listening to Indigenous Cafe. I'm Roman Orona. That was Jonah Littlesunday off of his album Gratitude, and that song was called The Plumes of Us All. And before that was Kristian Didgeridoo's Ensemble, and that was Milia, off of their album of traditional didgeridoo songs. As far as I know, the didgeridoo is an original instrument of the Aboriginal people of Australia, the Indigenous people of Australia, my brothers and sisters, our brothers and sisters. You're listening to Indigenous Cafe. I'm Roman Orona. You just listened to Tony Duncan, Grandmother Moon, off of his album Earth Warrior, and before that was Aaron White, I Bring the Moon and Stars, off of his latest release, Moonlight Love Songs. You're listening to Indigenous Cafe. I'm your host, Roman Orona, and it's about that time for me to wrap this up and get on out of here. I want to thank Jack Holland for calling in and being interviewed from Crazy Flute. Go out and visit get his music and support him. And of course, I want to thank you, the listeners, for joining me in our migration to the high mountains of the Andes, into Tibet, Australia, Mexico, and of course, throughout the U.S. as well. You listened to Breath Through Wood, and it was all about the various types of flutes or wood instruments. Enjoy your day. I'm going to leave you with a quote, as I always do. Peace comes from being able to contribute the best that we have and all that we are. That's from Hafsat Abiola. And I'll leave you with some R. Carlos Nakai. Enjoy the rest of your day.